is convening at 9 a.m. on February 26th at the Health Licensing Office in Salem, Oregon. I will now call the roll. Mary Hanson, I am here. Rebecca Covey.
Here.
Gordon Trone.
Here.
Janet Paquette.
Here.
Christy Knapp.
Here.
Mark Davis.
Here.
Members, during the course of the meeting, please wait to speak until recognized by the chair. Once you've been recognized, please state your last name. Audience members are asked to sign in on the attendance roster. Public interested parties' feedback may be heard during the public interested parties' feedback period if indicated on the agenda. Everyone is asked to use appropriate language, manners, and protocols when conducting board business. This meeting is called to order. First item on the agenda is approval of the agenda. Do I have a motion to approve the agenda?
Can I make a motion to change the agenda now? Is this the time to do it?
Well, we can have a discussion about changing the agenda, yes.
Okay. I'd like to move that we move item number 4, delay it or postpone it to either the last item of the day or until the board feels we're ready to go forward with that. I think that the information that it looks like we're going to be receiving today, both in the public interest feedback area and both of the executive sessions, should be heard first before we move forward.
Sorry.
Go ahead.
Kathy, I'm just wondering if there's more information that we as a board do not know about that you are aware of?
No.
As to why we would
Well,
do that?
I don't know I'd like to hear the public interest and feedback and get through the executive session so I know what I don't know.
So this is Sylvie. So why don't we have 2 public interested parties' feedbacks? So we could add one in between 3 and 4 and leave one at 6 because the public may want to comment on anything that is talked about on item number 5.
Okay, my only comment about that is that I think there are some public members who aren't planning on coming till after the executive session, so they might not know that you've moved the discussion forward.
Well, there'll be 2 public comments, so they'll be able to comment in either one.
And then could we still delay number 4 to the end of the day? Or later if we decide at that time?
Kathy, I think that number 4 should have happened at our last meeting, so I feel like it's really important to have a chair and a vice chair in order to do board business. So I move that we keep number 4 where it's at.
Davis, I don't know, I think that we don't know what we don't know, so maybe we should wait a little bit, at least till after lunch.
So here's a suggestion. I think that a lot of people know some personal stuff that's going on and are scared to talk about it. So let's add a public interested parties feedback period in between 3 and 4. After that, if you still don't feel comfortable moving on with 4, we can then move 4 down below between 6 and 7.
I say yeah.
Yeah, okay.
Does that work for everybody? Mm-hmm. So we're going to amend the notice to include a 3.5 to have a public interested parties feedback period. And then depending on how the board feels after we do 3.5, we may move number 4 after number 6. Does that work for everybody?
Yep.
So if somebody could make a motion to approve the amended agenda.
I move. Paquette, sorry. I move.
Nielsen, I have a question.
Absolutely.
Do our bylaws allow us to be changing the agenda?
Yes. So this is Sylvie. The only thing that you cannot do is add something to the agenda that was not already on the agenda. So moving the order of the agenda, is fine because the public knows what's on the agenda. If you were to all of a sudden add something to the agenda that's not already on the agenda, you cannot do that. That would be for the next board meeting because the public needs to know in advance that you're adding something to the agenda.
Thank you.
Any other questions? So we still need a second.
I'll second it.
Nathan?
Davis.
All right. We have a motion to add a 3.5 to the agenda, public interest, parties feedback, and I will call the roll. Mark Davis.
Here.
Yay or nay?
Yea or nay?
Yes.
Christy Knapp.
Yay.
Janet Paquette.
Yay.
Gordon Trone.
Yay.
Rebecca Cuddy.
Nay.
Mary Nielsen. Why not? Yes.
So the motion carries. So we're going to go on to item number 3, and so unfortunately, we're going to go into executive session right away. We will not start up back into regular session until I come out and make sure all of you are aware and get back into the room and get settled. So, but we are going to go into an executive session, and I cannot tell you exactly how long it will be. It kind of depends on how many questions the board members have for the attorney when they would be there, okay? I promise you we will not start back up into the regular session until I actually physically come out there and let you guys know, okay? So you're welcome to hang out in the lobby, and we'll come get you before we get started again. You can start reading your executive session script.
The Board of Certified Advanced Estheticians will now meet in executive session pursuant to ORS 192-660, 2F, ORS 192-355, 9A, and ORS 40-225 for the purpose of considering information related to legal advice exempt from public disclosure at 9:07 a.m. on February 26, 2020. Representatives of the news media and designated staff shall be allowed to attend the executive session. All other members of the audience are required to leave the room. Are there any representatives of the news media in the audience? Recognizing there is no news media in attendance, all other audience members are asked to leave the room during the executive session. We will return to open session before taking any final action or making any final decisions. Boom, we're now in an executive session.
Boom.
Okay? Okay, so you have to read your exiting script thing.
The Board of Certified Advanced Estheticians will now exit executive session and reconvene open session at 11:01 a.m. No final decisions were made and no votes were taken in executive session. Members of the audience are welcome to return, and representatives of the media may once again report all board discussions and actions.
Okay. We're going to take a 15-minute break.
I like that little hammer.
Very
I'll go
efficient.
do something and I'll come back around.
Okay, I gotta at least find out.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yes, we're going to take a break. Yeah.
Okay.
All right, for the record, we're back on. It is 11:15, and I do believe we are on 3.5 of our agenda.
Public interested parties feedback.
Yes, you have a green, part of your green sheet somewhere, I believe on the second page.
Thank you. At this time, the Board of Certified Advanced Estheticians, you're awesome, will hear public interested parties' feedback. Members of the audience, please wait until you've been recognized by the chair. Once recognized, please state your name and affiliation to the board for the record. And so the first person on the list is Tammy Kennedy.
Oh, I didn't sign up to have public comment.
Okay, Seisha Abbas? Celicia. Oh, sorry, Celicia.
Celicia, can you come up to the table so that we can hear you on the recording, please? Please and thank you.
Yes, and I actually brought paperwork for the board that I prepared to go along with it. Is it okay to give it to you guys?
Let me look at it and then we'll have to scan it.
Okay. Is this okay here?
Yeah, yes.
Okay. I'm Celicia Abbas, the Regional Director of Schools for Northwest College School of Beauty and IBS School of Cosmetology and Massage. And I know that you'll all be In your next executive session, reviewing information about the examination, I think is what I saw on the agenda. And so I've just submitted a letter to the board for some things to consider about the examination and the issues that I'm sure you guys will address in executive session, along with some supporting documentation to help. So I think that's all I wanted to say, and I wanted to thank you guys for all of the work that you do here. And if you have any questions, my contact information is in the information that I gave to Sammy.
Thanks so much, Marty.
And since we are having two executive sessions, or two public sessions, people may choose to pass now and speak at the next one. Okay. So the next person is Callie.
Can I pass and speak at the next session?
Yes. Can I write on this?
Sure.
So that I...
Well, you have to go through everybody's name next time anyways, because they all get to choose whether or not they want to again at the second one.
Gotcha.
So no point in writing on it.
Okay, Christy,
Lastly.
lastly? Okay, great,
I'll
thank
pass
you.
it out for the next session.
Okay, Sarah Wiley,
They'll also pass for the
okay, Nicholas Miller,
I will also pass.
Sarah Will,
I will also pass and speak at the next.
okay. Creed Tilia,
I'll pass as well.
okay. Ryan Cuddy,
I'll pass.
okay. Cynthia Mendoza,
Cynthia Mendoza with the Aesthetics Institute in Portland, Oregon, and I have a lot of concerns about the tests as well. It is a very poor test with incorrect answers as well as questions that shouldn't be. I also want to direct attention to the terminology of the FDA devices for both advanced as well as for the Cosmetology Board. We really need to get a committee or something working on this, because this is a great problem for the people that are coming through and paying for an education and being able to go forward with their career.
thank you. Deborah Maston, Steve Maston,
Pass.
okay. Joni Kerr,
Pass next session.
okay.
Did anybody forget to sign up that might want to say something now?
Okay. Okay.
All right, moving right along.
Next on the agenda is items for board action, 2020 chairperson and 2020 vice chair. Oh, I would like to speak and make a publicly declare for the record. I wish to publicly declare for the record I own an advanced aesthetic school licensed by the Higher Education Coordinating Commission as a private career school. Although no one is required to attend my school, I may have the opportunity to financially benefit from a person who enrolls in my school. I also wish to state for the record that I have written a textbook that was independently selected by the American Board of Laser Surgery, the organization that administers the Oregon State Board exam for advanced estheticians to become licensed certified advanced estheticians, as a recommended resource for study for the exam. 3 additional resources for the exam were also independently selected by the American Board of Laser Surgery for the exam. If someone opts to use the book that I have written as a resource for the exam, I may have the potential to financially benefit from their book purchase. In 2018, I received a 1099 for $213.52 for the sale of this book, and in 2019 I have received a 1099 for $675.64 for the sale of this book. Thank you. Okay. So, we are
Heavy.
on our...
So we're on item number 4 then?
Yes.
Well, 3 point, yes, sorry.
Okay. So I would actually like to move to go ahead and vote for our chairperson, because I know we've been waiting on this since last meeting. And I'd like to move to vote Mary Nielsen as our chairperson, as Michelle Blackwell, our past chair, recommended, since she's also in vice chair position right now and acting as chair and doing a great job. So I think because of her years, with the last 5 years or more of being involved, she has a lot of expertise she can bring to the table. Not only that, but being a certified advanced esthetician herself, I think it's really important. And so I would like to vote for that and move for that vote.
I'm not so sure that's a great idea.
Name, say name.
Davis,
There you go.
in light of what we just talked about, maybe that's not the best idea. Sorry. So let's talk about maybe different leadership for now, and until some things get resolved. I think that would be a wise choice. That's my opinion. No disrespect whatsoever. No one deserves the vote. It's not someone for them to have. They don't own it. Let's not be tone deaf here about what we just talked about. And let's see how it plays out and find out. But we do have an investigation. And so...
Excuse me, Nielsen. I believe what we discuss in executive session is confidential and not available for public knowledge, and therefore I believe we're discussing something that is not appropriate. Am I correct, Heather?
So information in executive session that was legal advice is covered by the attorney-client privilege, and what we talked about in executive session, therefore, is not something we would talk about here in public session. In public session, you could talk about items that were not that was not legal advice. So if there is something that is motivating you to state your opinion and to vote in a certain way that is not connected to, that is not legal advice, then you could state what that issue is and why it is that you are stating your position. Does that make sense?
Yeah, and we talked about things...
We don't want to say what we talked about.
It's my understanding that we talked about things that were already public knowledge. And we said that that was something that we would decide if we wanted to discuss it here. So I don't necessarily feel like I need to go into any kind of detail. I'm just saying that, being above reproach is an important thing. Having the look of impropriety is an important thing. And not being tone deaf. We've got thousands of estheticians who are trying to figure out what's going on. We've got a lot of problems in our industry. Mary, I respect her very much. She's an amazing business person. She's the most powerful esthetician in Oregon.
Nielsen, I think that's a very strongly worded statement, and I disagree with that.
Cubby, I have a question. So are you suggesting then, because of lack of information and because we obviously are not going to judge anybody on something that is in a phase 2 and not in a phase 4, and we're not going to be unfairly, accusing somebody of something, that we are going to shelf this then until we find out what phase 4 is?
No, are you saying that if she doesn't get it, then it's unfair? If she doesn't
No,
get picked
I'm simply
That's what you're saying.
that
If she's not picked as chair, then it's unfair.
Nielsen, please speak one person at a time and say your name first, so that for the record, since this is being recorded and someone will be listening to this recording, we need to make sure that the information is clearly presented. Thank you.
This is Davis. I think we don't want to just rush this process. We're trying to figure our way here. What's the problem with... So I nominate Dr. Jan. I say, Dr. Jan, we need new leadership here. And so we need somebody with wisdom and foresight to move this board in the right direction. That's my opinion. So...
Okay. I'm not trying to disrupt you, but everybody's going to get their chance to talk. Let him talk about his opinion and his thoughts, obviously without being disrespectful. But don't cut them off and everybody gets their chance. We'll go down the line and let everybody talk. So go ahead, sorry.
So I don't know how the process works, if I can just do that right now, and then we can vote on 2.
So I think the first thing is everybody needs to have their chance to talk. Once everybody's had their chance to talk, then we might be able to determine what direction we're going to go. So let's give everybody a chance. So.
Yeah, so, and no, please, no disrespect, okay?
All good.
So,
Nielsen, we're all grown-ups here.
yeah, thank you. We got to do what's right for this board and for our industry. We don't know how things will turn out, and we do have to presume people being innocent. But that doesn't mean that we automatically just say, oh, well, let's not worry about that. We need to have, I think we need new leadership. That's my opinion. So I'll go ahead and pass on to the next person.
Now,
Name.
now is my name.
Oh, I thought you said now.
You know I want to go.
Nap with a K.
Gotcha.
It's interesting. First of all, I think that there is a lot of questions about what we're even talking about.
Yes.
Because there are a lot of us that are not in the loop.
Yep.
And I don't know who that is or isn't. So I think for us to even discuss what the responsible movement forward for this board is without hearing at least a nice base of what is really being questioned, I think that is putting the cart before the horse. Secondly, I think if we feel that we're rushing, which is not, that there's a little bit of merit to that, then why would we not leave in place what we have and just decide what would be responsible moving forward and then make the decision? There's no way we should, and I also do feel that the leadership has been good, and I do feel, in a very unbiased way, and I do feel that the people that have been leading our group are here all the time. These are people that are putting in a lot of time. So I have a very different opinion, but I also respect the fact that until we've had a discussion around it, and until we feel like we have more information, I just don't understand how we could really move forward either way.
As I mentioned at the beginning, Paquette. As I mentioned at the beginning, I feel like it's premature for us to go forward with item number 4 until we have listened to the public input, and they've almost all chosen to speak later, so I don't want to put the cart before the horse as that regards. And even hearing the public input, I feel like I doubt that we are at a point where we should be addressing that today. Because we need time, just this handout that we're going to receive or that's going to be up here, we need time to ingest that information, what everyone's saying, and try to balance what the concerns are with what's best for the estheticians and advanced estheticians, and also for the public safety. I can't do that with all this information coming at me and then, okay, vote.
Okay. Done? Yes?
Yeah,
No,
I'm done.
Okay.
Sorry.
No, you're fine. Go ahead.
Drone. At this time, I have nothing to add to the conversation.
Covey, I do appreciate both Christy and our doctor for telling us how they feel about the matter, and I think that's true, and also you. I forgot his name, sorry, Mark. I do think there is a portion of us that are not fully in the loop, you're right, myself included. However, I do agree with Christy as far as, we are not, as far as not making judgment ahead of time and really finding out the facts and leaving what we have in place, perhaps even until we get to item number 4, and we can make a good decision on this as a board. So perhaps shelving this for another meeting.
Drone, we are on item 4.
I'm sorry. Yes.
We know what you mean.
So, yes, so in other words, voting in our chairperson until the next meeting.
Yeah, I'll give you some options. Mary, go ahead. I just want everybody to have their chance to talk.
Sure.
I meant item 4 is in the hearing between preliminary
Yes.
commission investigator.
Yes.
Yeah.
Nielsen, I have met with the Ethics Commission and believe I have information, but I believe I am unable to share that information because that information will not become public until they meet again, which will not be until May. So that is where we are at. I believe that based on this group's uncertainty about how we should move forward, I think that we should move the chairperson decision to the next meeting so that additional information would be available. Is that a possibility, Sylvie?
So this is Sylvie. You have many, many possibilities. So Maria, can you flip to the next slide, please? So this is what's currently in your statutes and in your rules. So those of you who have your computers up and use that, you're welcome to. But this is what the statute and the rule say. So this is where the board gets to decide whether you want to elect a chair or vice chair, kind of leave it how it is. Leaving it how it is leaves Mary as vice chair, and she will continue serving as chair until you change it. So tabling everything just means that Mary just continues running the meetings as vice chair, because she's not the chair, because there is no chair, because you haven't elected a new one. So if you want to leave it on hold, your next meeting is May 27th. So it can be shoved to that agenda, and which means you're not making any decisions today. You're just not doing item number 4. You're welcome to also say, you know what, let's postpone item number 4 until we get after item number 6. Which is why we put it in public session right before this, is intending somebody to comment. Yes.
So Kathy, I just moved to table it to our May meeting when we have more information.
Second.
Wait, hold on. So Covey did it first. Who did the second?
Nap.
Now, second.
Okay. So a motion has been made and seconded. You will now call roll. Indicate with yea or nay.
Mark Davis.
Well, I'd like to know what people have to say about it afterwards. So I would,
Say about what?
I'll say yay.
Christy Knapp.
Yay.
Jenna Paquette.
Yay.
Gordon Trump.
Yay.
Rebecca Covey.
Yay.
Mary Nielsen, yes.
Okay. So item number 4 will not be addressed today, and it will be addressed at the next meeting, which is currently scheduled for May 27th. So moving right along, we are now on item number 5, Director's Report. So those of you who are, hopefully, everybody in this room is paying attention to the legislation right now. So Sammy's going to go into a lot more detail about legislation that actually affects you. Specifically you, this board, and the Board of Cosmetology. However, there's other legislation that's also going on that affects the office. So those of you hopefully are all watching. Also know that the Senate Republicans walked out, and kind of things are a little bit on hold at the moment until they figure out kind of how to proceed. However, we do have 2 bills that are up that affect the office. One is we're getting another program, which is genetic counseling, and don't ask me what it is. Genetic counselors, it's another program being added to the office. And then we have another bill that also does some changing of educational requirements for residential care administrators, which is part of the long-term care board. There's several other bills that also have like little minor changes with us. We'll talk about background checks, what can and can't be disclosed, and stuff like that. So we're very busy, even though it's a short session. And like I said, there's another bill that totally relates to you guys. Sammy's going to get in a whole lot more detail of that one during her session. You also have currently three vacant positions. We're also working very diligently to recruit for those. However, the legislative session kind of puts everything on hold because that's everybody's focus, extremely for the legislation and for the governor's office. So usually that stuff won't move forward until after the session's done. We're hoping, we don't know what's going to happen, but we're hoping sine die is by the end of the month, which is now.
Friday.
Yes. And so they do have the authority, they, meaning the legislators, have the authority to extend the session because obviously there's a lot of bills that cannot be moved forward because there's not a quorum of the session to be able to finalize the bills. So that's also the negotiating power that the Republicans have on why they walked out. So we'll know a whole lot more when they decide to come back. Yes?
Cubby, how many applicants do we have for these positions that's been open for quite a while?
One.
One?
Do one for one public member
Yeah.
position.
One public member.
Paige is meeting with the governor's office on Friday to give a talk about.
Okay, and how often does the governor review those?
Constantly.
Oh, constantly.
So the governor's office, so the governor for one doesn't review them. The governor's office will review them. They have 3 individuals who work on boards and commission appointments, and they're kind of broken out, those 3 individuals are broken out kind of like in groups of what kind of fields those boards are. And so there's an individual, we have 3 individuals we work with because all of our boards are not the same type of boards. So, but that's where Paige worked for the governor's office and worked with them. And so if we get an interest form, we meaning Paige, automatically sends it to them. If they get one, they automatically send it to Paige. So then they're back and forth making sure that, so we do a preliminary background. Are they licensed or is the license active? Have they had disciplinary action? Because obviously that's, disciplinary action is, they don't want, the governor's office doesn't want somebody on the board who's had disciplinary action. So there's that constant back and forth. So it's constant. It's not like, oh, they only meet every Friday. It's constant. Yeah.
And what positions are open right now?
You have 2 public members and another physician assistant, or nurse practitioner. Basically the same kind of position that Jan's in.
Okay.
Any other questions?
Nielsen, do you think they would accept a nurse as a medical professional, or does it have to be?
Has to be an,
It has to be a nurse practitioner.
can't be an RN.
Yeah.
Thank you.
It's very specific in statute. Yeah. All right, any other questions before I move on? No? Okay, so moving on, we've got some statistics here for you. So up here on the board, obviously we haven't, I do the same as Heather does, I like to stand up. But obviously we're not issuing temporaries anymore. This part of the slide will eventually drop off, but that's when you have the grandfather, and you can see here where there's a blank, which is where we switched from the grandfather phase to where you must graduate from school phase, and obviously you couldn't graduate from school in that 3-month time period. So any of these applicants are all ones that are coming through the pathway that is not the grandfathering. Next slide. So again, this is the same information. This is an average broken out by quarter. So, and I've told this before, but fiscal year 17, quarter 1, so this is July, August, and September of 2016. State government likes to make things really confusing and hard to follow. But this is where we stopped. Remember quarter 3, so quarter 3 is always January, February, March. This is when we stopped allowing for the grandfathering and did permanent. And here's where you're currently at. Next slide. So this is so up there in the corner it says, sorry.
Could we go back 1 slide, please? Okay, so for quarter 3, we've had a loss of 9 members. Is that?
So this is an average. So this is an average. So on average for the quarter, for the 3 months, on average you have 350 individuals.
Okay,
It's the average.
all right.
Okay, let's go to the next slide. So this slide, which of course doesn't have the actual numbers either, but it's as of February 20th. So this is a snapshot in time. This is broken out by age and gender. So you'll see up there where it says female, male, and blank. People are not required to give us what their gender is. So if you choose to not give us your gender, or you choose to not identify as male or female, you're welcome to leave it blank. We can still keep track of statistics. You do, though, have to give us your date of birth and your social security number. So we currently have 41 individuals here, the age of 18 to 25. Looks like you have 7 individuals who are over the age of 66. Next slide. financials. So revenues being brought in, expenditures, your net operating value, and then ending cash balance. So your funds are kept separate than everybody else's funds. So they're in their own set of, it's in its own fund, so this balance keeps rolling forward. And one of the things that we noticed is that your revenue is obviously higher than we thought it was going to be, but you also haven't gone far enough along in the case process of being able to discipline anybody to go to a hearing. Because the instant you go to a hearing, it starts getting really expensive. So you want a nice good cash balance going forward so that if you do have a case that goes all the way to hearing, it doesn't put you in the negative right away, because it gets really expensive when that occurs. And we can recoup costs of going to a hearing up to $5,000, but no more than $5,000. So once you get, so some of those cases, the office has had cases that have gone all the way up to the Oregon Court of Appeals, and it's cost that board a lot of money, a lot. And so you always want to have at least some cushion in there to be able to cover that. And just remember, your funds stay in your account. They don't get taken by anybody else. They don't get swiped. They don't get used for anything other than operating your board. And then down here on the bottom is how your assessments are done. We've kind of talked about this in the past, but you are one of 16 currently. Genetic councils will make us up to 17. You are currently one of 16 boards and programs that the office oversees. So there's a shared assessment that gets divvied out between all boards and programs. So this is for internal. So, for instance, our rent. So the rent for the building is divvied up between all 16 boards and programs. And that is based on the percentage of licensees that you have. And every July, we reassess it. So every July 1, we reevaluate how many boards and programs, how many active licensees we have for each board. Cosmetology pays the vast majority of it, because cosmetology's got, 60,000 licensees. You guys currently, right here, are paying 4.39%. So it's a little bit, but it's divvied out. Then you have your small board assessment. So this is for the 3 individuals who work on small boards, and small boards would be considered anything other than cosmetology. So you guys pay currently 3.68% of those 3 individuals. Does that make sense? So that's kind of how some of your assessments are brought in. So then there's also assessments, because you don't pay this examination or inspection fee. Inspections, cosmetology, and body art practitioners pay for the inspectors to go out and about. So in a way, if you're an advanced esthetician, you do pay, because you have to have your esthetician license, and that covers the cost of that. Examinations, we don't offer an examination here, so we don't charge for examinations, so you don't have to pay for any of the examinations. Does that make sense? So then the office, so this is the HLO pooled expenses. The office also has expenses that are associated with being part of the Oregon Health Authority. So that's the big agency that we're under, part of David and I's group. So we all work for the Oregon Health Authority, but in that is assessments for, say, HR, payroll, IT. So there's these shared assessments that all offices have to pay a portion of. So we get a percentage of that. That percentage then is divvied out through this shared assessment also. So you'll pay a portion of that, but again, your cosmetology pays the largest portion, the biggest one. Does that make sense? Any questions? These are easy. Okay, next slide. Okay, Tammy.
The first 3 reports aren't really reports. I just put in the FAQs that Heather and myself drafted up for. They basically are really for basic esthetician or estheticians that don't hold an advanced aesthetics license, but thought it was relevant to have at least on the record. It'll be in the materials, and I'm assuming everyone's received them because I emailed them to you a few months ago. They're also on our website. If you have any questions, there's the scope of practice one, the chemical peel, and then the dermaplaning.
We all remember why we put these out there, right? We put these out there because the statutory definition of what advanced aesthetics is and what aesthetics is, and the difference between what can and can't be used, as such as the FDA device stuff.
Right. Hence the legislation. Go forward for. Any questions about these? Marie, you want to go on the legislative slide?
Nielsen, I do have one I want to make the clarification because I want it to be on the record because I know I emailed you, but the clarification for chemical peels is that a standard esthetician must have 5 hours of training sometime in her lifetime if she performs superficial or very superficial chemical peels. So that means if she performs superficial chemical peels, she must show 5 hours of training, and if she performs very superficial chemical peels, she must show 5 hours of training.
Well,
so is it 10 hours of training, or is it 5 hours of training?
It's supposed to be 10. There was a one line item deleted from the rule that I'm working on putting back in. But the intent of the rule change itself was 5 for superficial and 5 for very superficial. So in the next 90 days, it'll be put back in. What looked to be a duplicate on my 80,000th time around, I'm like, this is the same number. And it was not. There was one word difference.
Okay, yeah. I just want to clarify
Yeah,
that.
you're fine. Maria, can you go to right before question, are you on the chemical peels? No. Chemical peels.
Should be.
Keep going. Keep going. So it's numbers, next page. Right there. So up here's where she's talking about. That one and that one.
Yes. The only problem is that in the actual rule, one of those has been deleted. It was the very superficial one. So I'm working on putting that back in.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Yes, thank you.
It was a complete staff error. The proposed rule had it in, the permanent vote had it in, and it was just a review error.
Cubby, I have a question. So it's in the rules right now, it's 5 hours. So
For just superficial.
For just superficial. And so when that changes is when it'll be effective for the estheticians to have another 5 hours if they're doing the other?
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay? And then there's the dermaplaning one. Anyone have questions on that one?
Cubby,
Yep.
just for the record, so I'm understanding that dermaplaning is in the aesthetic scope of practice with training, and I'm just clarifying that?
Yep.
Thank you.
Okay, so House, for the record, Sammy, House Bill 4016, B, because it has several changes, is the bill up at the legislature right now. And basically what it does is it tries to clarify what basically a standard esthetician, can do in relation to devices, and then also takes into account when rules can be made to kind of expand on those things. Specifically for advanced aesthetics, it removes the registered with United States Food and Drug Administration piece of the scope of practice definition, and then also adds in specifically, it says lasers, intense pulse light, so it's added that in as a specific device that they would be using. So as a whole, it would say, if changed, advanced non-invasive aesthetics means a procedure that uses a laser, intense pulse light, or other device for non-invasive aesthetic procedures performed, ... So I don't, let me pull it. You want to switch to me, Maria? Like, I don't have it on here, but I really do. It's just on my computer.
Cubby, I have a question. Cubby.
So this is something,
Okay.
one of the things is when the legislative session, in a short session, so that I'm just going to explain why it gets so confusing. So during a short session, it is very unusual for us to get a new program. It's very unusual for them to make major changes to said programs. Back in the day, they didn't used to do that ever. Now they're doing it because they figured out, well, that's how you get things done, right? You have to wait 2 years to get something done. And there was a lot of talk from a very specific group, about wanting to get changed the definition of aesthetics and the definition of advanced aesthetics. And so they went to their legislators and they said, hey, we want to change. So they're working on a change, and the thing is that it get added to a bill that didn't make sense to anybody. So if anybody looked at this bill and said, oh, it's in House Bill 4016, well, when you looked at the first one, you're like, no, it's not. Because they had to find a relating to clause. So if anybody knows how the session works, it'll say in relating to blah, blah. So they have to find something that relates to, and then they can add to it. Well, they add to it with an amendment. Again, you don't see that until it is already read and onto the record and part of a work session. So it gets really confusing because it's not a bill that started out dealing with advanced aesthetics. So it was kind of hidden for a little bit. And then we're up to, I do believe, 18 amendments.
19 now.
19 now. Not all amendments relate to aesthetics and advanced aesthetics because this bill now is combining two different topics. Does that make sense? So it gets really, really confusing because they may change just one little word and then a whole bunch for something else that doesn't relate to you. Or they do an amendment that just changes one word.
Yeah, out of like the 19, I think they only adopted 4.
Yeah. So it gets really confusing and you don't know what's occurring until after it has occurred. Does that make sense? It gets really confusing. So ask away. We know how this process works, doesn't mean everybody else does. Okay.
Well, I was just wondering, so this was just sent to us, correct? This particular bill?
It was sent your materials.
Right, okay. So
Well, the
Link.
The link
Right.
on my legislative summary is linked there. Because this is changing, I just got the new text today
okay.
with the be engrossed.
Okay, I was just checking to see if you had informed us earlier of this bill and I missed it.
Nope.
Okay.
It changes every minute. That's why I had Sammy look, this is Sylvie, that's why I had Sammy look this morning. Because this morning it's different than it was yesterday.
Okay.
So things during short session happen really fast. And I mean, we could actually potentially go out there right now and it could have changed again.
Yeah, there could easily be a 25, like in a blink of an eye.
So this has already gone through the committee then, and we're just waiting?
Part of it.
Here,
Part
I'll
of
show
it.
you.
Mhm.
It's actually, so it's had a public hearing, a work session, went through the House, the House Healthcare, and then it got referred to rules, because short session means it has to keep moving quickly. And then rules had a public hearing and work session, and both committees voted on amendments. And then now it's been referred to Ways and Means Subcommittee on Capital Construction. Don't know how that fits, but hey.
But you literally
So now
have to go out and look at this all the time.
I must check it 18
Constantly
times a day,
changing.
probably more.
So, Nielsen, my concern is for us as this board, this is something that's affecting our scope of practice, yet we have not had a strong awareness about it. And so,
And for the record, this was not brought forward by this office or this board. So this was brought forward by a group that got contacted the legislators and brought it forward. So it is not something, this board, you as individuals can have every opinion you want, but as a board member, you are completely neutral on this. Like I said, we've had these conversations before. You're welcome to testify at the legislation, but you need to say, I'm here in my own capacity. Because as a board member, you are neutral on this. If this passes, we will implement it. We are 100% neutral on it. Because remember, because that's part of our role here. You as an individual, say whatever you want. Just clarify that I'm speaking on behalf of, or whatever, you want to say.
In my own capacity.
Yes, but not as a board member. Did you have a question?
Well, stop me if I extend beyond the bounds, but my very first day on the board, we have been briefed on these things, and so we knew that there was problems.
Yes.
And so I know I, for one, was like, because of my work on the Rules Advisory Committee, I was maybe much more aware of it. And so, we discussed what I call the fix. There was how we're going to sort of fix it before all this stuff with a separate group coming and doing their great work, what they did. But thank goodness we've got thousands of estheticians who are in complete confusion. But, and so maybe it's not fair for me I'm not trying to brag. I was like saying, this is an important thing. We need to have a fix. And so when we had a conversation, people stopped me and said, oh, that's absolutely not going to happen. You're going to screw this up. We don't want to go and have any kind of legislature get involved because we got powerful interests against us. And so I felt like, I knew this was sort of coming down the pike. And so it sort of gets back to what I was saying before, is like, as far as leadership goes, if people don't know what's going on, I think we need to sort of get in touch with what is happening and do what we can to make smart decisions. And because obviously that was not good, just sort of blowing it to the side. Some people in this room were saying to me, well, they said they got it fixed. That's all you need to know. And I said, yeah, what else did they say? What else they said was, we don't know what we don't know, and some things could come down the pike which is going to be something detrimental, and we don't have it. So we got a bunch of people out there who look at this board and think, man, those guys are a bunch of dummies. They don't know what they're doing, or they're making decisions based upon their own, influence, or based upon what's going to help them. That's the way it's looked at. And so I think we should educate ourselves and get behind it. And, I just want to make that point, that it's not like we are completely in the dark about it.
So I get what you're saying, but you as an individual, educate yourself and get behind it all you want. This board, that is not your responsibility. As a board, we are neutral on all bills. We're not pro or con against any board, any bill. That's our job, is to remain neutral, and then we then implement whatever bill passes the law.
Yeah.
You as an individual, 100%. But as a board member, that is not your job. Does that make sense?
Yeah, and that's not what I was suggesting, and I'm just saying that it was a big surprise to some people, and so...
You mean the rule changes in the Board of Cosmetology rules?
Yeah.
Okay. So,
Yeah.
just, the Board of Cosmetology has their own set of statutes and rules, and they make those decisions, and this board has their own set of statutes and rules, and do not make decisions for the Board of Cosmetology. So, just so we make that delineation.
Well, we voted on... it got passed down to them, is from my understanding.
But they made those decisions as that 7-member board appointed by the governor.
And we voted that we thought it was a good idea, and it seemed like a reasonable fix at the time. I was happy about it because I had looked at this stuff in the Rules Advisory Committee, back and forth, like, oh, I think we got an idea here, and then it would turn out like, guys, we can't do that because the statute says X, and we have to make rules based upon the statute. And so, okay, all right, and then we go to the other and say, okay, that looks like it's going to work, and then come back and say, okay, that's not going to work. And I was a part of every single Rules Advisory Committee, and it went back and forth, back and forth. Sometimes it got frustrating because I think, well, we talked about that one 2 years ago, and now we're back to arguing about that thing. So, when it was my very first day on the board, when it was introduced to us, these potential things that was going to come down, and I called it, I don't know, the fix, because we were just going to do right in concert with the FDA.
Right, so I think just to clarify, your first meeting, there was just a conversation that in order to try to fix what's happening in cosmetology would be to remove the US FDA statement out of the advanced aesthetics law. No vote was taken, but there was a conversation, and there were people, we probably should do that, that wasn't what we intended, and then everybody walked away. There was no vote, it was just a conversation.
Nielsen, correct. I do not believe we
Okay.
made any decisions about...
But there was a conversation, for sure. And then Sylvie provided, here's how you do it, da-da-da-da-da, you'd have to, and she said, I would help educate you on how the process works. Yeah.
Cubby, I think there might be some confusion just because there's been several rules advisory boards over the last, 5 to 6 years, and not everybody's up to speed on those things. So I think there's a little confusion here.
Yeah, absolutely. This is Davis again. Sorry. I realized it was a shock. I remember some of you guys were just, what? Somebody said, how come I'm only hearing about this now? And that's a reasonable thing. But, you unveil things as they present themselves and what's ahead of you right in front of your face, but I think one of the things is, and tell me if I'm stepping outside, I think Joanna said that we want to ideally, a board should function with the powers that is invested in it. And the fix, quote unquote, was something that was going to, she said, weaken our powers of board and render us a little bit.
So this is Sylvia, that's not what she said. What she was talking about is you have to write your rules based on the way the statutes are written. People don't like the rules, and I get that. Trust me, we all get it. They don't like that they feel like something has been taken out of aesthetics because the way advanced aesthetics is written. And that's true. The way the statute is written, advanced aesthetics has a very specific definition. And the intent of the legislation is here's what's advanced aesthetics, which obviously is not what's in aesthetics. So in order to now get that stuff back into aesthetics, which I don't think anybody truly intended to take it out to begin with,
Correct.
is to change the statute. Because the way the statute is written has unintentional consequences for your estheticians. And so now that's why this bill, House Bill 4016, is out there, is to try and get that back to where this is what the intention was, which is why the FDA, where it's totally removing the whole registered with the United States Food and Drug Administration out of the definition, and it's clarifying both advanced aesthetics and pure aesthetics. And I'm trying really hard not to use the word standard or basic.
It's very difficult.
Yes. Yes, Michelle.
Yeah, heavy. So I'm maybe a little bit in the dark here, but I was under the impression that even with everything as it was, nothing really was taken out of the aesthetics aside from maybe microneedling. That's how I read
The downfall is some of those devices are FDA registered. And as soon as you say any FDA registered device is advanced aesthetics.
Hold on. Okay.
That's where the issue came up.
So now the fix to that with this House Bill 4016 is to simply take out that statement.
Just to clarify a few things, but that's your major thing. That FDA device, registered device thing was really mucking the waters.
The Q&A gives a pretty good answer to your question, I think.
Kevy, just for the record, I know for a fact that when that was put in there, it was mainly to protect the consumer because of the Chinese devices out there or things coming across that were not safe for the consumer.
Yes.
And so that was the intent of that. What is going to protect the consumer now?
The new bill has a caveat that says device has the meaning given that term by the Board of Certified Advanced Estheticians by rule. So you guys can say you must use an FDA-approved device, and you guys can define what that looks like.
Okay.
Davis.
If the statute passes, if this law passes.
So that's what I was discussing. That's what I was talking about when I said about the power of this board, because that's what we should be able to do, right? Is that
Yeah, so
correct?
this, if this passes, this would give this board authority to define device for your profession. advanced
Which is the whole,
profession.
that's what I was referring to, is that the fix sounded great at the time, but it actually caused, it went down a hole that they said, we don't know how it could turn out adversely, but it was what we had to work with at the time based upon the law that we were writing rules for and voting on. So, anyway, I'm really grateful to this outside group that has done this amazing work. And from what I understand, we've had something like 750, 900 estheticians donating money out of their own pocket just because they're trying to figure out how to navigate this. And since we've got this walkout you're talking about, Sylvie, so then the walkout means what? The walkout means that this thing is not going to...
She's on hold right now.
So that
Let me
means
figure
what
out.
for the estheticians?
Wait, it's on hold. Don't know yet. I'll wait.
Yeah, this is Sylvia. All bills, everything that's over at the Capitol is on hold, which includes this bill. And a lot of other bills that are pretty darn
Can't
important
get
right now.
to the governor until you pass through the House floor and the Senate floor.
Yeah, and everybody understands so that every bill has to go through both sides, fully
Right.
through both sides. So House bill, so this is a House bill, so it's HB 4016. So it starts over on the House side and has to completely 100% get through the House. Then it has to go over to the Senate side and completely go through. And you saw how many meetings there were. That's still on the House side. It hasn't passed the House floor.
Yeah, it hasn't even went to the floor yet.
Yeah, so that's where they literally, the floor is where all the House of Representatives meet and they vote. So there's 100 and some of them, they'll sit out there and vote yay, nay on it, all the bills, right? Once they vote and it passes, then it goes over to the Senate side and starts all from the very beginning through all their committees, all their stuff, and then has to go to the floor for the full Senate vote. Well, right now, the Senate's the one that all the Republicans walked out. So anything that needs to go to the Senate side is kind of on hold. This one hasn't even passed the House side yet. Does that make sense?
Yeah, so the estheticians are currently working outside of scope if they're doing what they used to be able to do, is that correct?
The what?
Practically speaking, are estheticians who are just trying to make their livelihood based upon things that were always in scope? Because this hasn't passed and it hasn't even gone
It would
through?
depend.
So
Okay.
because
There'd be a lot of
Yeah, that's
outside
a
factors.
very
that-
unique situation, so this bill's not in place.
current law is what is operating right now.
Yes.
Yeah, this bill does not change current law. What's in place is what was in place in December, in last July. So that's what current law is.
Nielsen, but this board has never intended to take away from the scope of practice of standard estheticians.
No.
The things that they have always been doing. That was
Correct.
never the intent of this board. And Bob, is your investigators actively inspecting and finding people for use of these devices, or are they waiting until this matter can get cleared up?
It's case by case. So there's inspectors doing inspections, and there's investigators doing investigations on complaints that we receive.
This is Sylvie, so we're not going to get into the specifics of each case. The law that currently is in place is the law that's currently in place. The rules that are currently in place are the rules that are currently in place. If somebody chooses to break those rules or those laws, they take the chance of getting cited. And until this bill, and if this bill passes, the law and rules that are in place right now are what's in place and what people need to be abiding by.
Covey, so just kind of for the record, because I think there's a lot of confusion out there, is apparently something that just came up with the cause board that was voted on is what caused this big, concern that wasn't there before. So I'm trying to identify when that happened and why it went through. But yet, I'm just I need a timeline, I guess, on
I'm
that.
going to pull it up for you right now.
Okay.
I'm all over it. Okay, so back in June 11th, 2018, the board met and approved a rules of violence committee schedule. And they jointly met with the regular aesthetics that haven't changed and advanced aesthetics. They met, all this time went by, joint committee, board meeting, more joint committees. Oh, the regular just cosmetology met. And then August 5th, 2019, the board approved proposed rules. In those proposed rules was the rule that basically is saying if you are using FDA-approved devices, that's advanced aesthetics. That's basically, in the nutshell, that's what that says. The Q&A gives a much bigger picture of all of that. Then we noticed for it, the proposed rules went in the Oregon Bulletin, held a public hearing September 24th. And then October 14th, that's when they approved permanent rules. And then they also did a conference call on the 29th where they approved a permanent rule, a proposed rule for one specific one, A171065, which wasn't around this specific issue. And then, so officially, the rule we're talking about was October 14th, which then went in place January 1. Does that make sense?
Okay, so that's what Mark's talking about with all the rules advisory.
Yes, this
Okay.
is, yes.
I see.
All of these. And a lot of them were joint. So he wasn't a part of the May 20 and June 24th because we had all fields of practice for cosmetology, but all of these ones, and Christy was involved in these as well. So.
Covey, so I guess that's why it's so important to be active at these board meetings.
Yes.
Sharon, I want to make the point too. In the past, the rule was written to say that if an advanced esthetician was working with FDA-approved machines, they had to be, let me clarify that. If they're working with FDA-approved machines, it was okay, but it didn't specify that if you were not working with it, non-FDA approved machines, that it was okay. That was a clarification I wanted to make.
It's an interesting question. I'm going to let other sites write that one.
Now,
That's one I don't want to have no part of. Yeah, it's it does say must use an FDA-approved device.
I mean, under the purview of an esthetician, you can use non-approved FDA machines for those purposes that are approved by an esthetician. But if you're doing the advanced treatments, then they have to be FDA-approved equipment or machines.
That would be what the law says. It appears that way.
Covey, so what is the issue?
Oh,
If that's what the law
regular
says?
aesthetics can't use FDA-approved devices.
Oh, whether they cannot.
Yes.
They cannot, period, end
Cannot.
of story.
So you need to read the FAQ. It would be so helpful for you. I
Yes.
can walk through the FAQ if you want. I mean, here,
Yeah.
what products or manual, mechanical, electrical appliance or apparatus can an esthetician use? You can use products, blah, 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 that do not require US FDA registration, which include the following, da, 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 da. And then, to go with that, and they can only facilitate exfoliation of the skin, improve the appearance of the skin, give the skin a smoother look and feel, and give the skin a luminous look.
now,
Does that make sense? Does that
It
clear
makes
it up?
perfect
it
sense.
does.
I feel like where the gray area comes, definitely like when Skin Pen came out with the registered, and that was more for a certain use anyway. So technically the FDA is saying they're not approving a device, they're approving it for a certain function.
Purpose.
So there's that gray area.
Right.
Then the second gray area is you can get pinpoint bleeding on a 0.25, and when you hit an epidermal dermal junction, all of a sudden you're out of the scope of practice. So I feel that the board at some point, after all the legal stuff is sorted through, it would be really nice to just have a public statement of parameters. I know.
I hope that comes to fruition.
But I feel like there's a lot of gray areas that make it,
Like
like,
what's a
is it,
wound?
isn't it?
Yeah.
Are we safe? Are we all want to be in compliance. And everybody that's asking is like, I want to be in compliance. And it's like, well, if you really want to be safe, you just probably shouldn't be doing it unless you have the advanced license. But I feel like the gray areas are many.
We don't disagree with you.
Would you not?
So my understanding is correct.
Oh, yeah.
Well, yeah, I mean, that's why you guys have never defined wound. For this exact reason. And a lot of us depend on complaints that we receive. If someone injures somebody, then we're going to be looking at the device. Was it in the scope? Was it not scope? Was it medical? Was it this? Was it that? So a lot of things will depend on that. We don't have a lot of those types of complaints.
So I might want to make a comment, and hopefully everybody in this room is listening. House Bill 4016, on page 5, section 5, talks about the amendments to advanced aesthetics and to cosmetology. And these changes do not go into effect until January 1 of 21.
Right.
So if that was not your intent,
not.
hopefully there's a new amendment that comes out that changes it. Just want to put that on the record.
We can begin operative things like function starting to do.
Well, we can write rules and everything,
Right.
but it doesn't
But
become
we can't
operative until
operative.
January 1.
Right.
Which means that if the intent is to get that FDA device out of there a little bit more immediate than January 1 of 21, there needs to be another amendment that changes that. So if that's the intent. Yes.
Covey, I don't know if you guys can speak to this or not, but do you know why the term intense pulse light was put in there? Because I know that's the only thing that seems to be different besides the number 3.
Okay, so as you, as an individual, want to know details about the bill, in your professional capacity and not as a board member, you're welcome to contact the group that created the bill. I can give you their email address if you would like
I
it.
put a sticky on top of each of the things I just handed out.
Okay.
Yes.
Right up there.
So if you have
Contact
questions
them.
about the details of that in your own personal capacity, not as a board member, you are welcome to email that email that is on your bill. Does that make sense? Okay.
Sylvie gave me that gift.
Are we ready to move on? Any more questions? And we got to keep the board business. All right. Where are we on now? Regulatory report?
It's Bob Bothwell for the record. So in the regulatory report, you have 3 biennium on there. I am pleased to say that in the 15-17 biennium, those remaining, with the exception of 1, and the report's being done right now, is closed. They're closed. In the 17-19 biennium, there also is a change with that one. We did receive 18 complaints, but there's only 7 remaining open. We got another one closed, making a total of 11 closed. And in the current biennium, we've had one complaint, and it remains open.
Oh, sorry. Oh,
What?
never mind. I thought I was still up there, but Maria handed it.
Because you were busy.
I know, eating.
Are we ready to move to
Item number 6. Yes.
item number 6? At this time, the Board of Certified Advanced Estheticians will hear public interested parties' feedback. Members of the audience, please wait until you've been recognized by the chair. Once recognized, please state your name and affiliation to the board for the record. Tammy Kennedy.
Okay, hi.
Sorry, we just want to be able to record you correctly, but everybody else can hear you later.
I'm Tammy Kennedy, and I am the instructor at the Coffee Creek Correctional Facility, School of Cosmetology. And I have a few things that I was kind of seething about while I was sitting over there. And the bill that we've talked about, the original advanced aesthetics, was poorly written. And sadly, that's why we are where we are now. And there's some concerns that I feel like it's kind of a circle. You know, we have this bill that was written by somebody, and then it was brought forward, and, you know, we should have paid more attention to what was happening, but I don't know that we really did as estheticians. And then, you know, then we have this book that comes out, and then there's questions about this book, and, you know, it's like, well, the book's okay, I have the book, we have the book. And then there's the test from the ABLS that is, you pull their study guide and it is all about the book, that same book, from the person who wrote the bill. So it's all kind of like this whole circle. And then now we're talking about kind of what you said is, you know, then we're talking about, you know, who's in charge of the board. Well, you say, Sylvie, that you can't use your own interest to bring forward stuff if you're a board member. Well, if you're in this circle, then that's all you're doing, is you're bringing forward all your own personal stuff, your personal agenda. And I just really think that the board needs to pay attention to that stuff. And, you know, I don't really want to be up here talking about it, but it upsets me because this is our industry. And it's gone to a place that it shouldn't have gone to. So, anyway, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, Tammy. And I would like to make a clarification that there seems to be an assumption that I wrote the bill. There was an entire committee of people, just like Estheticians for Fair Licensing has written their bill. I was part of that committee. Several of us on this board were part of that committee, but I did not single-handedly write a bill and push it through the legislature. I don't have that kind of power. Okay, our next person speaking, Celicia Abbas.
Hello again, Celicia Abbas, Northwest College. And most of what I wanted to say is already contained in the documents that it doesn't look like are going to be passed out.
Yes, I'm going to consult with Sylvie before I do that.
Oh, okay. Mostly in there, I wrote a letter addressing to the board just a few concerns. One of the main point of concern was the examination. The second point of concern was one of the study references and how several of the examination questions are sourced solely from that, whereas the author of that book has threatened some schools with legal action for copyright infringement if there's any derivative works made, which if you are teaching a curriculum, you need things like PowerPoint presentations, study guides, things like that. That all falls under a derivative works. And so, in my opinion, and I believe it's shared by some people, maybe not, that creates an unfair advantage to some other schools, I should say. But that's the gist of what I put together in my concern letter. It is just about the examination and the book. Thank you.
Thank you. Celicia, thank you for those comments. I would like to also make a clarification that yes, my attorney did send a letter to schools cautioning them that they are welcome to use the textbook. In fact, I happily would give you copies of the textbook. As you can see, it is not a huge financial profit center for me. However, I had schools approaching my students asking to buy the material that I created. I created those PowerPoints, I created the tests, I created the worksheets. That's my original work. And I had schools approaching my students wanting to buy that material from them. And that's why the schools were sent those letters, so that they would understand that when it's my intellectual property, I take that seriously because that contributes to the success of my school. But if you need a textbook, I'm happy to give people textbooks. I want solid, advanced professionals out making good wages, making a living wage, advancing this industry, helping the consumer. And so there is not an intent. If that letter was interpreted, I want more schools. I have stated that at many board meetings. We need more schools out there because that's the only way this industry is going to survive. So, okay, that's my intent.
Let the comment stuff go. We're on public comment.
All right.
Respond.
Pardon?
Could I respond?
Can she respond?
That's up to you as
That's up to you?
Certainly.
So I would like to put it out there just for your own knowledge that we are federally accredited and we have our own curriculum and we don't use your textbook. But when we received that letter, we were a little confused because long before that ever came, we did have our own curriculum. And the content of the letter, I know it was written by you, it was written by an attorney, but it appeared that we were trying to copy you. And I just want you to be aware that we didn't, and we have a fully accredited, fully at a federal level approved, and it has nothing to do with any of your intellectual property.
I'd like to ask you a question. Is that okay? Can I ask you a question?
Nielsen, I would just say my attorney sent a letter to all schools, just as a blanket covering all the bases. So there was not an accusation being made. It was just to state a fact. Davis, would you like to make a comment?
I just want to ask you, so are you saying that the test, in order to get your license, has proprietary information in the test that you can only access through the book?
Correct.
at
Are we
that.
talking about the test today? Is that on the agenda?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay, let's continue with public comment, and then we will get to, I would also like to make one more statement. ABLS created the exam. This board was not, we were involved in making the decision to contract with ABLS to provide the exam, because there was no one else that was willing to provide the exam. But we did not create the exam, if that makes sense. Okay. I believe that it's on here, it's on the agenda, because we certainly want to have students have a fair, we want people to have a fair opportunity to graduate and move on and become a professional. Nobody on this board, including myself, is trying to limit people from becoming licensed. Okay, sorry. Where am I? Callie. Callie Boomer.
Yes, I'm Callie Boomer. I'm an esthetician. I'm an advanced esthetician. And I just wanted to go on record and say that I'm just here because I'm passionate about aesthetics, like esthetician and then advanced esthetician.
Thank you, Kelly. Christy Lassie.
I'm Christy Lassie. Is this okay? I'm a certified esthetician as well as advanced esthetician. I just like to state that my advanced education has been imperative in knowing the new laws, modalities, safely treating my clients on what's new and what's out there. I just appreciate the board for helping to bring these to fruition and helping to educate us all here. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Christy. Sarah Wiley.
My name is Sarah Wiley. I am an esthetician and an advanced esthetician. I don't really have much to say except for I really appreciate all of you. This is my first time at a board meeting, and watching how much time and effort that you are putting into this is amazing. I think having this board is very important. Reiterating what Christy said, continuing education and these rules and everything is very important to our practice, for us as providers, and for our clients.
Thank you, Sarah. Nicholas Miller.
Hi, my name is Nicholas Miller. I want to thank the board for giving me the opportunity to speak to you guys. I'm also an esthetician and a licensed advanced esthetician. I went to Mary's school Spectrum firsthand, and I got to get a very good education from her. I just wanted to thank this board for giving us the opportunity to speak as estheticians and voice our opinion. That's all I have to say.
Thank you, Nicholas. Sarah Will.
Hello, I'm Sarah Will. I have been a certified esthetician for 10 years, and just in the past 5 years I became an certified advanced esthetician, and I believe it has really molded me to become really hone in for my passion for aesthetics, and really give my clients the best care for them. And I really thank the board for allowing me to do that and giving me the best information possible. Also, I have been trained just a little bit with Mary with some of my continuing education, and I have learned quite a bit and really appreciated it. Thank you very much.
Creed Tilia.
Hi, my name is Creed Tilia. I have been in the aesthetics field for over 13 years.
I have worked in several states with aesthetics, and states that have no rules at all, and states that have a lot of rules and everything in between. Yes, I have moved a lot. But as a hiring manager, as a consumer, I really appreciate having the Certified Advanced Aesthetics Board and also having the Cosmetology Board. I think for me, once I look at the resume and I see both boards, it's very easy to know, okay, if I'm needing laser and someone who has more training, I believe 750 hours of training over, I know who to go to. If I'm needing someone more on the cosmetology side, I also know to go to, and I think there's a place for everyone in this business growing like crazy, which is important to have a set of rules. I also appreciate having FDA-approved devices used on my skin as a customer, and I think it's very important. And I know it's not going to be a bill that you guys are approving or not approving, but I think it's very important to keep the FDA wording in there because it opens doors for many devices. I have been to several aesthetics and medical conferences within the last year. I have seen several new devices that I have never heard of, and I think it's going to be impossible for this board to spend so much time going through each and every single one device and say, yes, that's approved by this board, this is not, because you can't. You can't. It's computers, it's technology. So for how it's work, I want to state that it's very important to keep that FDA approving in there, just for the fact that it's impossible to control it otherwise, unless we can come up with a different naming there or a different word that will allow us to control somehow, to have safety, because it's all about safety. It's our skin, our largest organ. It's all about safety, and I don't think we should remove the FDA approving there. Sorry, getting through my notes here. The other thing I greatly appreciate, so everyone knows I did the ABLS testing when I moved to Oregon. I did not use any books by any board members here. I passed with a 96% rating based on my own knowledge. So it's possible to pass without that. And even if there's wording in there, I'm sure you can take the MCAT and there's going to be preparatory words in there to certain books, but it's based on your knowledge, not necessarily on what book you're studying. And yeah, but that being said, I greatly appreciate having a book, having something that we can all reference and use as a resource. And I think everyone, if you have the knowledge, go ahead and write your own book so we have more resources. The more knowledge we have, the more information we have, the better it is. So that's it.
Thank you, Cree. Ryan Covey.
I'm going to pass.
Cynthia Mendoza. Deborah Maston.
No. First of all, I'd like to clarify, there is a declared emergency passage in House Bill 4016 that we put in at the end so that once this does get hopefully passed through both the House and the Senate and goes on to be voted for, then we will have an emergency clause in there.
May I say something?
Yes.
What version do you have?
The one I handed you
Then we
today.
look at the end of the summary sheet. It says declares emergency effective on passage. Summary sheet. It was added late because we realized that date was going to hurt our amendment.
But it doesn't make anything operative in the bill until January 1, 2021.
You look, we'll talk afterwards.
Okay, we'll talk afterwards. Well, yeah, our intent was to hopefully make it a...
yes, I know.
Oh, it's intense. Okay.
That's the reason I said it.
Yes, we recognize as a group, and I'm not speaking for the group today, I'm speaking on my own, that this was not the intent to have this problem from this board or from the basic board. It kind of was something that unintentional consequences. You know, we're not professional legislators, we're not professional rule writers or anything else. So that was not the, you know, no one's throwing daggers about that. But we do have a problem, we do need to address it and fix it, and if this amendment does not go through, there is some problems, and we hope that we can get together as both, you know, we can work that out. As far as other issues, as far as ethics and textbooks and all of that, all of the issues that I addressed in ethics complaints are public record. From the April 12th conversation meeting, from the emails between ABLS and members of this agency and other people, everything is public record. So what I would like to say is that please do your due diligence and make those, the ethics committee will look at everything and make a decision, but this needs to be very transparent. This agency needs to be very neutral, which, you know, there are some questions in my mind about that. And I also think that going forward that everyone needs to look at how they deal with all of those things that could be potential conflicts. We don't want to have to address these kinds of things, but I've been very disappointed, I would have to say. I've been around this building for many, many years and involved in aesthetics and advanced aesthetics for 20 plus years, and we've never had these kind of problems before. So I would like to see the ABLS as a testing agency not doing our test anymore. I have some ethics concerns about that. I also think that the use of materials currently, there's many, many problems that need to be addressed, and hopefully in your executive session you will find out some of those things. And going forward, I hope that the transparency is much better. So, thank you.
Thank you.
Steve Maston?
He went home.
Joni Kerr.
Hi, I'm Johnny Kerr, and I am a licensed esthetician in the state of Oregon, representing Oregon Estheticians for Fair Licensing. We have worked very diligently to provide a fix for Rule number 67, which limited our scope of practice for standard aesthetics in order to reinstate our use of a number of devices, including microcurrent, galvanic, electronic skin scrubbers, other standard devices that we're trained in and have been using regularly in practice. Another example would be LED light therapy amongst other devices. There have been, to our knowledge, no consumer injury or complaint regarding these devices in practice in the state of Oregon. And they have a very excellent safety record, and we understand that this was an unintended consequence of the law defining advanced aesthetics. And so we have worked to restore that through this House Bill 4016, working with an attorney and a lobbyist to get that taken care of, so that would allow the Board of Cosmetology to amend Rule 67 and allow us to practice within scope once again. Obviously, there are a lot of consequences financially for myself as a practicing esthetician and hundreds of other estheticians in the state. With the walkout, potentially, that means this bill may not be heard until next year, which would delay it another year. We're kind of throwing our hands up. What do we do? We'd like to consolidate our efforts and show unity with the advanced aesthetics and try to show some support for all estheticians in the state of Oregon to continue our practice in our trade. Obviously, it's been pointed out that we are operating out of scope if we continue to practice. And then recently another rule was passed in terms of continuing education requirements that if we are unable to continue practicing these modalities for a period of a year or longer, that we would need to be retrained in those. So that puts a tremendous financial burden on estheticians throughout the state, and I would love to hear how we might be able to get some additional solutions or support to make this happen. We are all diligently trying to call our representatives with the legislature to get back to work and reinstate the opportunity to vote before March 8th. So hopefully this can happen, and yes, it's my understanding that there has been an emergency amendment that this would allow the law to be passed immediately instead of January 1st of 2021. And as estheticians, I think that this has consolidated our efforts to be more involved as a profession in the state in the goings-on, and hopefully elevating our concerns and our practice so that we protect our profession and our consumers and allow us to have the integrity that we all deserve in our practice and in our profession, and providing services to our consumers that they desire. And, you know, as far as, you know, my personal training, I was trained 10 years ago at the Institute of Skincare. I've been trained on all of those modalities and use them consistently in my practice. My hands are tied right now. I'm not sure, you know, at this point I've just explained to my customers that, you know, we're hoping to be able to reinstate some of the services that they expect. And I had no personal interest in pursuing advanced aesthetics because I don't personally have an interest in practicing laser or other more advanced modalities in my practice. That's just not the design of my business. I own a small day spa on Southeast Hawthorne, and it's a very successful small practice. And I would hope that I would be able to continue to thrive in that capacity. And I know that a lot of other estheticians are hoping to have those options as well. So I kind of throw ourselves on the mercy of this board for your support, both as individuals and as a board, to take a look at this legislation. If you are so moved personally, to call your representatives to support the bill, to see if we can get some passage, and then also to, at some point, support amendment of Rule 67 so we can continue. Obviously, there's continuing implications for students that are being trained on an ongoing basis in our schools to practice with these devices as estheticians, and aren't allowed under the law as it stands right now. So I appreciate your time today. Thank you so much for hearing us out, and I'm anxious to see how things turn out. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Joni. I want to remind the board that personally, or that professionally as a board, we are neutral. If you have a personal investment in aligning yourself with the Oregon estheticians for their licensing, then you would do that on a personal level.
And you do a public comment. You guys have plenty of time.
Okay. That is the end of public comment.
Oh. Anybody else who didn't get a comment want to comment? Okay.
Right. That ends public comment. So, do you wish to comment?
Well, I just wanted to state, as you know, as a board member, that I very much, we've always, we're certified advanced estheticians, so that's what our board business is. But we are also estheticians, and so we've always, I think, as a full board, tried to look out after both. And that is a huge priority for us. And so I think that's really important that we continue to do so. And that for the record, people understand that we're trying to work basically as our cosmetic board and our certified advanced board, but we are both. So we appreciate everybody's attendance today and speaking.
Nicely said. Yes.
So, this is Sylvie before you move on.
Okay.
We are yet, once again, going to go into an executive session. After that, they're going to come out of that executive session, and it will be a long one. You're welcome to hang out. I'll come get you, and you can sit in the lobby for probably a couple hours if you want to. You're more than welcome to. They will go back into regular session and do an action item, which is item number 8, and that will be an action item on basically the examination. So if you want to hang out and wait, we'll come get you, and then you can hear that. If not, you're welcome to leave. They'll post the recording onto the website, obviously not the executive session piece, but you'll be able to hear what they talk about in number 8 and 9. Completely up to you. We will open the doors back up before they get to number 8. If you're out there, you're out there. If you don't want to hang out, you don't have to. Number 9, they cannot make any decisions on anything, but they can talk about things that were done today, and they can also talk about things that they're going to put on the next agenda, which for those of you who are interested, the next meeting is May 27th. And so that's what item number 9 is about. So, but they cannot make any decisions, so they won't be making any votes on item number 9. So again, completely your choice on whether or not you want to stay and hang out in the lobby for a couple hours, but we will come get you if you're still out there. If you do not want to stay, it usually takes a couple days for the recording to get put out on we are updating the internet. Where's Callie? We are updating the internet right now. So they're updating the program, so we can't add anything to the internet. So it may take a little bit longer to be able to catch the recording. So again, use those thoughts to decide whether you want to stay or not. But again, your choice, okay? Is there anything else that we needed to say before we go into the executive session? Because we're also going to take a break. She's on break. Okay, so she's going to read her script about going into executive session. We're going to take a break again, so we're going to wrap into this. It's going to be a long one. So we're going to read her.
The Board of Certified Advanced Estheticians will now meet in executive session pursuant to ORS 192.6602F and ORS 192.3454 for the purpose of considering information related to examinations exempt from public disclosure at 12:50 p.m. on February 26, 2020. Representatives of the news media and designated staff shall be allowed to attend the executive session. All other members of the audience are required to leave the room. Are there any members of the news media in the audience? No. Recognizing there's no news media in the audience, all other audience members are asked to leave the room during the executive session. We will return to open session before taking any final action or making any final decisions.
Okay, let's get it done. Okay. All right, Maria, we're ready to switch around. You need to read your exiting executive session thing.
Do you want me to bring 10 minutes?
Yes, we need to see if there's anybody still here.
There is.
There is.
Oh, lovely. I am starving. No, I haven't salad in my paw.
You want a sandwich?
No, I haven't. You guys hung out there, huh? All right, Maria, are we ready to get back on?
Do we need to wait for Mark Davis to return?
Oh, yeah, sorry. Okay, now we're ready. Maria, are you ready?
Okay. The Board of Certified Advanced Estheticians will now exit executive session and reconvene open session at 2:27 p.m. No final decisions were made, no votes were taken in executive session. Members of the audience are welcome to return, and representatives of the media may once again report all board discussions and actions.
Okay, so this is Sylvie. We are on item number 8. Here is the information that was handed out by one of the public members. You're welcome to read this, discuss it if you want. And then we have a few decisions we need to make. And then, will you make sure, Sammy, did you make sure Maria already has one of these?
I have one too.
To add to the materials? Okay.
I wish to state for the record that I have written a textbook that was independently selected by the American Board of Laser Surgery, the organization that administers the Oregon State Board exam for advanced estheticians, to become licensed certified advanced estheticians as a recommended source for study for the exam. The additional resources for the exam were also independently selected by the American Board of Laser Surgery for the exam. I have looked at a couple paragraphs of this information and do not feel comfortable, do not feel that it is appropriate for me to continue to review this information and participate in this review.
Okay, all right, well, let them have time. Do you want to take course here and hold under?
Yeah.
And then they can continue reading and... There's no packets?
I have one, thank you.
Is everybody done reading the materials? You've done enough, yes? So obviously, this letter is concerned about the exam. Is there any discussion that anybody would like to have?
Well, I'd like to make a motion to try to answer some of these concerns and to address the problems with the tests that have been identified, that we move to have Cerinthia ask the ABLS on our behalf to correct the questions that are not satisfactory. And as a second half, just so we don't have to convene to talk about it for every detail, if somehow they aren't willing to correct them, to delete them.
I second the motion. Trone?
So we have the motion to modify questions that Cerinthia has identified as the concerns, or delete them if ABLS is unable to modify. Okay. Mark Davis?
Yes.
Christie?
Yes.
Janet?
Yes.
Gordon?
Yes.
Rebecca?
Yes.
Mary? Yes. Okay.
Hi, Cadigan. I have a second question that I'm just having this put in front of me for the first time, but I know one of the concerns talks about that several of the questions on the CAE certification are sourced solely from the compendium book, which is Mary's book. And even if it weren't, my question is there a standard number of sources that should be listed per question when you develop a test?
No.
So some tests it's common or at least acceptable to have only one source?
Yes.
And then
However,
my understanding of our discussions were that all of the sources they're using are peer-reviewed? And so we have that assurance at least, that they're using peer-reviewed sources to develop their questions?
Yes.
Okay.
Now, you said you were going to have a however beyond the
Yeah, what were you saying,
source.
Cerinthia? You said however, and then...
Oh, I'm sorry.
Oh, we like to have multiple sources to be able to, because we can't require somebody to purchase a book. So we like to have source A and B to be able to source the question out of.
So it's preferable to have more than
Yes.
one, but
Yes, and that was one of the recommendations that we had made, or requests that we had made to ABLS, is there was only one study reference, so if they could modify that question or rewrite it so there was able to be able to source it out of multiple books other than one.
Trone? I'm guessing here a little bit, but I believe part of ABLS's thought in this process is that we have the internet now, and you can investigate anything on the internet. And I think that's part of the difficulty that they had with some of their questions, that they wanted you to go on the internet and source this and try to find it yourself, rather than finding it in a current textbook, which, as you know, there's not many out there available. I am sure there will be some new ones written along those lines, but especially now that publishing is much easier, doing self-publishing on the internet. But I believe that's their momentum for developing many of these questions.
Maybe, I don't know. It's not listed on their blueprint. However, we have identified each one of those questions in multiple sources, so they are sourceable out of more than the one book. So if a school wanted to buy these two to ensure that they get all the information, then, and I think they're pretty affordable. They're like $65, $45 a book. So.
Now, I would like to make a recommendation in light of some of the information that's come out today, and I feel like there's so many valid points on all sides of this issue, and I would like to recommend that we create a committee to create a state board, an exam that is regulated by our board, so that they can provide us with the information, and we can regulate, we can get better information out, and we can control the exam process.
Abby, I second that motion. from making.
So it's my understanding that you guys would like to move forward with creating a state prepared exam. Okay.
Okay, now, Kathy.
Yep.
So part of that will be probably for us to get together a committee that can meet with expertise on that.
Yeah. So let's deal with one motion at a time. So it sounds like there's already been a first and a second to create a state prepared exam. So you can continue having a discussion on that specific topic, or you can vote and then we can move on to the next topic.
Let's vote.
So there is a motion to create a state prepared exam. And a second. So I will call the roll. Mary Nielsen, yes. Rebecca Covey.
Yes.
Gordon Trump.
Yes.
Jenna Peckett.
Yes.
Christy Knapp.
Yes.
Mark Davis.
Yay.
Okay, so part of how the office creates a state prepared exam is that we need a committee, and that committee is then going to meet with Sarinthia. What we need you to decide is the type of people, not the specific person, because the type of people need to apply. So Sarinthia will reach out once you tell her the type of people that you want. Type meaning, I want a person who's licensed in advanced aesthetics and has been licensed for more than a year. I want somebody who is a teacher who teaches advanced aesthetics in Oregon. Whatever you guys want to come up with. But not a person, not, I want Jennifer Smith. Does that make sense? And then you also need to decide how many people. So you want to be cautious about getting too awfully big, because the larger the group you get, the harder it is to them to come to a consensus and to move forward. So that's your discussion now. You give us some direction, and then Sarinthia will then try to reach out to those types of people that you discuss. Yes?
Yeah, how, for Sarinthia, how many schools are in the state? 6, something like that?
I believe there's 6 at this point.
So ideally, I'm hearing you probably want to have educators and maybe practitioners.
At least educators.
Yeah, educators are going to know the most about the Oregon curriculum, what the required curriculum is in Oregon. Again, Oregon is very unique because we have 7 modalities versus other states. So like Washington has master estheticians, ours are called advanced esthetician, but they don't cover the same modalities. So you're going to want somebody who's very involved in Oregon.
So how, what's the sense of what you think is attainable for getting
Nielsen, Sarinthia,
educated?
could you tell us, typically in other board writing exams, how many people are typically on the exam and who they typically are?
Generally, we don't like to have more than 6, and we like to include educators.
Thank you.
Kavi, I'd like to entertain the fact that since we have 6 schools and we have some dissension out there right now, that we include all 6 schools, if we can, to help write this exam. Because I think that if it comes back to the board, we can then look at those exam questions and be able to make sure that those are sufficient. But I would think that would be a good way to go.
How? Might want to consider asking for representatives, a representative from each school, as opposed to having 2 or 3 from one school, and then the others be disproportionately represented.
That's a great idea.
Nielsen, I think it would be a great collaborative effort if there was representation from all schools.
Now, I think it would be a conflict of interest to have more than one person from one school. I think having a representative is a fantastic idea, but I do think we're in this unique time and this unique situation where it would be, I think, a really positive, powerful thing.
Agreed.
To have, and I think the strength of what we have would be really well represented, and we can, if somebody's lacking in one area, I mean, it's just a win-win for everybody. So I think if 6 is the magic number and there's 6, I would highly recommend
5
it.
is in Coffee Creek. So 6.
So how, just clarification, so if for whatever reason, one of the representatives of the school didn't want to participate, you might be binding yourself there to simply say 6 from each. So I don't know if it's a matter of saying minimum 5, but invitation to all 6, that kind of thing.
Well, we got to look at quorum, so.
Is that how it plays?
Yeah, whenever we get a meeting, I have quorum of the community, so if it's 6 got 4.
Let everybody have a chance. Go ahead.
Okay. So we're back to the conflict issue again. I'm wondering, Mary, how you feel. I would think it might be best to have one of your educators at your school.
Janet, I would not, I understand that.
Yeah, I'm just
interest, so I would,
bringing it up.
I think that I would want an educator from my school to be representative, but I don't think that it would be appropriate for that person to be.
Perfect. Just wanted to discuss that.
Board members don't serve on the committee.
Yeah,
Oh, yeah,
this is Sylvia. The board members also,
Oh,
we
yeah.
don't want
We
board
don't
members on the
serve on the
committee because you get to ultimately decide whether the exam is
Good.
valid or not. Do you have anything you want to say?
Well, 6 schools, so we can't really get around it. What Hal was talking about is that if we say 6 and somebody doesn't want to participate, then we would...
Then you have 5. You're still have quorum.
Okay.
Yeah, and it's representative, from what I'm hearing you say, is a representative from the school. It doesn't have to be the school owner, it's just somebody from that school. One would assume they have more than one employee.
Right.
So it could be anybody who's available from that school.
Nielsen, I would request that the person from the school be licensed as an advanced esthetician.
Right, I think that makes sense. Yeah.
But one would assume you have more than one teacher. That's what I was trying to say. Right. It wasn't implying this should not be somebody who's licensed, yes.
Nielsen, could someone who teaches nails come to help write the exam
Right,
for
yeah.
advanced aesthetics? That's because
Oh, if they have multiple fields of practice.
Yes.
What about directors? So if a director isn't licensed, but has, like, oversees multiple schools or a school, and they have extreme experience, would you consider something
It
like
sounds like they want somebody who is licensed in advanced aesthetics and is also a teacher. That's what I'm hearing. I'm not trying to put words
Like
in
a
your mouth,
registered
sorry.
teacher?
Just clarify.
So we can put the invitation out to 6, and we only get 5, that's fine, but...
You have to have 4. If you have
I'm
a
sure
group of
each
6,
school will do it. 3 of them are owned by the same person, so. 3 of them are Northwest colleges.
So, Covey, if everybody feels like we've talked about it enough, I move that we go forward and invite 6 schools to form this committee, and they have to be a certified advanced esthetician and educator to do so, and if only 5 can or 4 can, then that's acceptable. And that we can also, they can, send somebody, they don't have to be the same person, correct? Yeah, I move that.
Sammy brought up a good point. Northwest has 3 schools, so for them to be able to send all of their educators at one time, I don't know.
one from each school, so it would be...
Yeah.
Yes, but if they can't, because they're teaching class and they can only, have substitute and only provide one, that now brings us down to, I'm just
like
saying,
Medford people
do you want an alternate?
So here's the thing. She made a motion. Let's do the 6. I'll tell you what will happen because I'll make you get on the phone again if something happens and you can't get 6. So she made a motion of 6. If we determine that we can't do 6, so somebody still needs to do a second vote. But if we can't get 6, we'll get you on the phone and say, look, we can't get 6. Now what do you want to do?
How about if you can't get 4, you get us on the phone? Because that's 4.
I mean,
that's what I meant.
when I do rules, I don't have them give me a specific number.
They want a specific number because they want a specific person from each individual school
We'd like
to be
to
part of the
invite.
committee.
Be invited.
Yes.
Only 4 of them have to participate. All 6 schools need to be invited. And if 2 schools say, I can't let somebody go, those 4, the downfall is those 4 have to be in that room at all times, nobody can go to the bathroom, okay, that's quorum. But if we hit that issue and we need your advice, then we will do another meeting and we'll talk about it.
Tyrone?
Yep.
I second Becca's motion.
A motion has been made and seconded.
All right, I will call roll. Mark Davis.
Yes.
Christy Knapp.
Yes.
Janet Paquette.
Yep.
Gordon Trone.
Yes.
Rebecca Covey.
Yes.
Mary Nielsen, yes.
Boy.
Yay.
Did they ever finish the motion on actually having a committee?
That's what they just did.
No, Knapp and Covey. Knapp made a motion and Covey seconded it, and then they started talking about who's going to be on the exam committee.
Oh, Lord Almighty.
So
Okay,
you might
let's go
wanna
back.
just do that
Okay,
one.
so let's go back. There was an original motion to make a committee.
Yes.
There was a first and second of
Finish
that, so please call roll on that. This is to make an examination committee to work with Corinthia on creating exam questions.
Mary Nielsen, yes. Rebecca Covey.
Yes.
Gordon Trone.
Yes.
Janet Paquette.
Yes.
Christy Knapp.
Yes.
Mark Davis.
Yes.
Okay, so now, because we did it a little out of order, now, since you made a motion to have a committee, so now we're going to do a motion to have 6-member committee, 1 from each school. They all have to be educators. They all have to be licensed as certified as advanced estheticians. And there was a first by somebody, and I don't remember who it was.
Covey made the motion, Trone seconded.
First and second. So now, do a roll call on that one.
Mary Nielsen, yes. Rebecca Covey?
Yes.
Gordon Trone?
Yes?
Janet Paquette?
Yes.
Christy Knapp?
Yes.
Mark Davis?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, now, Sammy, we got all your things?
Got it. Sorted, good to go.
It's a good thing you're keeping track.
Okay. So we've had 2 executive sessions today. So if there's anything on your desk or you're sitting in front of you that needs to be turned in due to it has executive session information on it, can you please make sure and hand it to Sammy? And she will collect it and put a part of that.
Can I keep the house bill?
That's outdated
I've had
already.
no printer for
No, you're fine.
2 weeks. I'm moving my own.
So we are going to move on to item number 9, which is other board business. So this is where we talk about, for one, the next agenda. The next agenda, which the meeting is May 27th, unless I need you to get together prior to make some sort of decision. So your normal next meeting is May 27th. At that time, we will put on the agenda the items for board action for chair and vice chair. Again, at that time, you can decide whether or not you want to move forward or not, but it'll be on the agenda. Also, we will have an update. I'm pretty darn sure our session will be done by then, but you never know. We'll have an update on the bill that's in front of you, where it has gone. I would highly recommend all of you keep an eye on that. Sam, one of the things that Sammy can do, because she's going to send you out a bunch of information already
on my to-do list,
is to email you the link of how to get to it. If you have questions about the process, legislation can kind of get a little confusing. You're welcome to call any of us. Remember, there's our cards are in the back. Remember, and things with this bill are going to happen really fast, especially, so I'd be keeping an ear out for if the Republicans are willing to come back to the Capitol or not. Because when they do, everything's going to go 100 miles an hour. Because they're on a timeline to get things done.
And if they don't, we're just done till next year?
There's a whole lot of what ifs. So there's a lot of little things that are in place that could occur. So the legislation can extend the session. Kate Brown can also extend the session. So there's a whole lot of what ifs.
Oh.
Right now it's a bargaining chip, so nobody's willing to talk about what ifs. So there's a whole lot of unknowns. I mean, the whole session could 100% die, and everything is messed up, not just your bill, or things could progress. I don't know what to tell you.
Mm-hmm.
When they walked out during the long session, they finally did come back, and things got done, so we're hoping that that's what's going to happen this time, but again, I don't know. So, that's a whole, but I would definitely keep an eye out. Because it's going to hugely affect this board and Report-Cosmetology. The other thing is that your rules for if the bill passes are going to have to be opened, especially if they change the operative date. It will be a, oh dear God, real fast moving thing, because upon passage it will go into operation. So Sam, we'll probably have to open your rules pretty darn quick. The other thing is when you finally decide to approve the exam, once we get to the point where it's ready for you to approve, that also has to be put in rule. So because your statute says that that individuals have to pass an examination adopted by the board by rule. So again, Sammy has to open rules and get that put in there. Because currently the rule talks about the ABLS.
No, it doesn't.
Does it?
Right, breeze right over that one.
No, yeah, well, anyways, it's an exam that the board approves.
Yes.
Right. Yes. Yes,
Abby, I just have a question just kind of relating to our packet here and also the exam. So when we do get the new exam in place, will we have more materials for the schools to be, or will you guys help with that as far as curriculum goes and all that?
So you're talking about resource materials?
Yes.
For the
Okay.
exam?
Yes.
Yes. So that's one of the things that the committee will have to do, besides just writing questions. It's like, okay, well, what are we going to write them out of? What are some good sources out there? Again, this group of 6 is going to be the experts in it, not us.
No, we don't have to do that. We don't have to do that. All we have to do is take the questions and make sure they're...
Right, and so Cerinthia knows that, again, this is Cerinthia's expertise. Cerinthia knows how questions should be written, and your goal is to always have 2 sources, again, because we don't, can't force somebody to get a certain book. But that being said, if there's only one book that has said answer, and nobody can come up with another book that discusses it, but we still need to talk about it because it's one of our domains. It's like that, but that's where that committee will have to have that conversation, and they're going to say, look, we couldn't find it anywhere but in this one certain spot, or this one we could find in 5 different books. So you can get all 5 of these books, or one of the 5, or whatever. But that's exactly what the committee will do.
Okay.
Yeah, because it has to be sourced specifically where you can, because if somebody challenges it, well, this question's wrong. Well, the answer to it's right here.
So this is Heather. Was your question about a blueprint and providing a blueprint?
Would you guys like to see what a blueprint looks like?
Right, yes, that'd be great.
Sammy, can you bring up, Maria, can you switch over? So let's kind of go through, this is going to be, what are we looking at? Barbary? So this is a standard, obviously everything up on top with all of our information. But then it will have the type of exam. It'll tell you how many questions are on the exam. And then it tells you how long, so this is our standard, remember we do a lot of exams here. So it'll tell you how long you get per exam. Then it will be broken out in domain. And so here, for instance, this is the main domain, and then here's the 3 subdomains. And in these, this is how many questions are asked in the exam. So there's 14 questions asked for this domain. We typically like to have a big cushion so that we're rotating questions. So there's not only 14 questions that are written. We probably have, I would say, 20 questions written, but we only ask 14 of those 20, and they randomly go through. So even when you're sitting on the computer in here, and if somebody next to you, we don't have everybody right next to each other, we don't have to. But even if you're taking the same exam, you're not getting the same questions. Does that make sense? So then it goes through all their different domains, so you know what you need to be studying and how many questions are on it. And then it talks about what the passing score is, so that's easy. If you have 100 questions and a passing score of 75, that means you have to give 75 correct. Oh, it's really easy. But then it also gives you exactly where these sources are for the question. So for barbering, it's My Lady's Standard Professional Barbering, 5th edition, published in 2011. And as we know, that's a long time ago, right? That's a long time ago.
Yes.
But we would then have to go through and with a new book and resource. So one would hope that barbering is still teaching the same barbering basics, right? And it's still any book that's an effort, because we can't tell schools what book that they have to use. This is what book we use to source the question. But our questions are also, if you scroll back up, the domains. These domains align with what HEC, the Higher Education Coordinating Commission, has agreed as part of the curriculum for barbering. Right? So that's our intent. So eventually we will have a blueprint, and this gets into way more detailed of the different domains. And when an individual, if an individual does not pass said exam, we give them a handout that shows them what portions of domains that need to be studied. So in this domain, you were asked 10 questions, you got 2 right. You probably want to study in this area. So we give, so it's like a study guide for them. And that blueprint will align with what the curriculum is. So that will be the goal for that committee. And Cerinthia knows how all this works and all the little wheels and Nelsons that make it happen. And so that's the long-term goal. Yes?
Nielsen, 2 things. So Cerinthia, you will take what we have, the information that's currently in the rules, which is lists anatomy, diseases and disorders, ANSI standard, and that will become part of those things that will tell them how many questions.
Yes.
Then does this also, so Heather back there in the corner, then does that allow for students who don't pass the exam to access Heather as a study resource, how she currently helps students who don't pass cosmetology.
So let's get everybody on page who might not know what she's talking about. So for the Board of Cosmetology, and you'll have to address this when we open rules, because there's a whole lot of things in the rules that you're going to have to do about the thou shall not cheat, which means you can't take anything into the thing. And then there's the retake policy. So you'll address all this when we get to the open rules, blah, blah, blah. So, when can somebody come back and take the exam again? How many times can they take it, all that kind of stuff. So in cosmetology rules, they have written in there, because it is working, so Heather meets with individuals who choose to do a study review. So she goes through the exam with them and does a study review, and the goal is to help them pass the exam, right, and get licensed and move on. So that will be a decision you guys get to make when you open rules. If that's something you want to offer, then we will offer it, but yes, that's an option. Does that make sense?
Yep.
Now it's kind of off.
It's off topic.
Cosmetology does it, but it's working, so we actually put it in a rule for cosmetology because we were offering it for cosmetology, but now it's actually in the rule because we have proof that it's actually working and people are passing and getting their license and moving forward with their lives. So, but you'll address all that when we open rules. Yeah,
Thank you.
Little head of the game, but yes, 100%. Any other questions, comments, concerns?
Board business, we were discussing agenda.
Yes.
So my concern with this board, I would like to make a focus of 2020 is to get something in place for those people that are in outer markets that are having trouble getting to aesthetic schools. We have talked about externships and those types of other options for licensing, and I want to make sure that that is a focus for us.
It's on the list,
in 2020.
a rulemaking list, hybrid program.
Yes, so this is Sylvie. One of the things is having to work with the way your statutes are written and with HEC, because this is the conversation that we've had. Again, Oregon's so unique. I went to school in, Montana, and I know 4 of your 7 modalities, but I don't know your other 3. Why should I have to go to school and learn all 7 when I know 4 and I only need to learn 3? So it's kind of dealing with those people that just don't have all 7. And so why should I have to do all 7? Does that make sense? Mm-hmm. But we have to work with HEC on how do schools accept those 4 and only have to do the 3, because the way our rules are written is you have to graduate from a school. Well, hopefully it'll allow a school to accept that, and then you only have to do the 3. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
But that's where HEC has to get involved. And so Sammy has had some communication with them, but we're going to have more, and we actually do believe have a meeting set up not too far in the future. And so, but that's our, because it can't just be us. Because the way that this is written, you have to have an education, but cosmetology has it. Cosmetology has the,
Pathway 3.
It's the combo thing, where it's like I have experience, but not all the experience. Correct.
I would like to make that a focus, because I know that it's a frustration for people, and we need to get that part addressed.
100%.
And I know how long it takes things to happen.
Yep.
So, okay.
Anything anybody else wants to make sure is on the agenda? Any other topics that you want to discuss at the moment? Can't make any decisions other than what's already been done. But we can make sure decisions on
my usual concern. Can I ask that we put if we're going to have public input on for any reason, can we hear it before we vote about the chair and
absolutely
vice chair? I'd like to do that late so we can hear.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Cubby, one more question. So if this bill does not pass, are we, I'm sure we'll be notified, but is that a time when we might come back and meet again to see what's going to transpire after that, since we have quite a few people that are very interested?
You're saying if it does not?
If it does not for some reason. Or is it automatic that it will, if the Republicans don't come back to session, I'm just saying, and it doesn't go through, then where are we at?
The current laws and rules are stay in place and nothing changes.
And we've already discussed trying to find a way around it, and we couldn't find one. Yeah.
For the record, Gordon's got to leave, and it's 3:02. So that group, the email that's on your thing. So that group, specifically, a bunch of them contacted the Oregon Estheticians for Fair Licensing. So that group contacted a lot of their legislators, and then their legislators contacted us about, hey, what's going on? Because obviously we're the ones that regulate the rules and statutes, blah, blah. And so we then would send them those Q&As that we said, here's what the Q&As are, here's what the statute says, and then that's when several legislators were willing to move that bill forward. So we know it is very forefront in their minds, and a lot of legislators want it to pass. They want it to move forward. But again, the cap and trade bill is pretty much leverage on everything right now. And so it's not that nobody wants it to move forward, that's not the issue. And so, but if it doesn't, just know that this is not the only bill, and there's a lot of really important ones out there. I'm not saying that this one's not important, but there's a lot of bills out there that are going to be stopped. So, I mean, it's, you know, I mean, it'll suck, but it will suck for a lot of people on a lot of bills, not just this one. Because it will stop everything. And you're talking some agencies' budgets, you're talking some agencies' federal grant money. They won't be able to get federal grants, which is where you draw down, because you have to spend your own money and then you draw down federal grants to offset it. None of that stuff will move forward. So, I mean, it's a very tense situation down at the Capitol right now.
So individuals should be contacting their Republican.
If individuals have a very strong opinion about something, they have every right to contact their legislator. If you don't know who your legislator is, it's on the same website that Sammy's on. Because you remember you'll have 2 representatives from your district and a senator from your district. So there's 3 individuals there that you would want to contact if you wanted to contact somebody on your personal time. Anything else? Okay, if you think of anything after you leave, you're welcome to email Sammy. We'll get it on the agenda. I know we covered a lot of stuff today, so I think everybody's a little fried. But you do have, if nobody has anything else, you do have a closing script.
Yes. No other comments? The Board of Certified Advanced Esthetician meeting is adjourned at 3:05 p.m.